Welcome to my channel and thank you to my subscribers. If you have not already subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. In this video, we are going to see how to add a Cognito user pool as an external identity provider to another Cognito user pool using the OpenIDConnect protocol. So this use case can occur when you build a product which is integrated with the Cognito user pool, and then you have a customers of your product who also uses a Cognito user pool. So in order to allow the users from your customer organization to log into your product, you can actually set up a federation using OpenID Connect protocol between your Cognito user pool and the customer's Cognito user pool, which will be in two different AWS accounts. Uh, So this is like any other OpenID Connect integration. The only thing is that both you as an organization and your customers organization use Cognito user pool as the identity provider. So you want to now set up a federation between both the Cognito user pools. So before getting into the configuration steps, I will quickly explain the end-to-end flow. So when a user tries to access a client application through the browser, the client application will redirect to your Cognito user pool. So basically the Cognito user pool that your organization maintains using the authorize endpoint. So it basically uses the authorization code grant flow. And then your Cognito user pool will then redirect to the customer organization's Cognito user pool instance using the same authorization code grant flow. So the URLs of both the user pools will be totally different. And once the user logs in, that is the when I say user, the user who is part of the customer's organization logs in using their Cognito credentials. The credentials will get validated in the step number 6, and then an authorization code will be sent back to the first Cognito user pool, which is basically the your Cognito user pool. And using that authorization code, it can get the tokens and then the user details using the user info endpoint. And then your Cognito user pool will validate the tokens and create a new user profile for that user if they are logging in for the very first time. If they are logging in for subsequent times, like from the second time onwards, if there are any changes to the attributes, it will update the attributes in the local user profile, and then it will generate an authorization code in step number 13 and redirect back to the client application through a browser redirect. And the client application will then use that authorization code to get all the tokens like ID token, access token, and refresh token. And based on the claims in these tokens, basically the ID and access tokens, the application will either allow or deny access to the user and then display the corresponding page in the browser. So this is the end-to-end flow. So now let's look at the end-to-end configuration of how to do this setup for this particular use case. So I'm going to use two different AWS accounts which I have opened in a Chrome browser and a Mozilla browser. Both are totally different accounts. So I'm going to create two different user pools in both these accounts, and then let's see how to configure one of the user pools which represents the customer's user pool in my use case as an external identity provider in another user pool, and then log in using the users of the customer's user pool. So let's navigate to the Cognito console and create a user pool. So I will quickly go through the steps. Let's not worry about each and every configuration. You can always explore that at a later point of time. So whatever is required for this particular use case, I will quickly show what needs to be configured, and then you can do it yourself in your AWS accounts and then test that end-to-end flow. So in this page, select username, go to next, and we don't need MFA. Disable these options, go to next, disable this option and disable this option, and let's leave these attributes as is. Go to next, select this option. Anyway, we are not going to use. this email option. This is for OTP, all those things. Anyway, we are not going to use. Just to get to the next page, I'm selecting this option. Go to next page, and I'm going to name this as user pool org a and select use Cognito hosted UI. So please don't forget to select this option because without this hosted UI feature, it won't work. The federation won't work. So here I need to give a domain name. I can actually give any domain name which is available. So let me try up user pool org. Yeah, it is available. And we need to create a client. So I'm going to name it as product A. Select generate client secret. And as of now, give a dummy callback URL like example.com. Check these client settings just to make sure everything is fine. You don't have to make any changes. The authorization code grant flow is used. And here, instead of OpenID phone email, let's use OpenID profile email. And let's go to the next page and create the user pool. So here we created one user pool which represents the organization. Basically, the user pool with which your product is integrated. So in this diagram, if you see, this is the first user pool that we created now. Now let's go to the Mozilla browser. Again, go to the Cognito service. And let's create a similar kind of user pool in this AWS account. Sorry, not this one. Go to user pools, create user pool. Exact same options. So select username, go to next, disable MFA, disable this option, go to next, disable this, and go to next. Send email with Cognito, go to next. I am going to name this user pool as user pool customer A and use Cognito hosted UI. And here I'm going to name it as cust A. And then you need to create a app client. So I'm going to name this as, so this client will represent the user pool that we created in the previous step, which is your organization's user pool. So let's name it as org up client and generate a client secret. And let's come back to this URL again. As of now, just enter a dummy URL called example.com and verify these app settings. And similar to the previous user pool, let's select OpenID profile and email and click next and create user pool. So now we created two user pools. So if you look at this one, this is the one I created, user pool org A. And then we have another user pool called user pool customer A, which represents your organization's customer who wants to use a product that you have built that is integrated with your Cognito user pool. And both are in totally different AWS accounts. And now let's see how to set up the OIDC federation between these two user pools. So the very first step that we need to do is, if you go to the customers user pool and then go to the app integration tab, here you can see the client that we created, which represents the other user pool, which is the actual organization's user pool. So go to that user pool client. And then if you look at the redirect URL, initially we gave a dummy URL called example.com. Now we need to update this URL, and this URL should point to the first user pool that we created here for your organization. So go to that first user pool's configuration app integration tab, and you will see the Cognito domain, which is the URL, the browser URL for this user pool. So let's go to the documentation now. Cognito user pool. Just search in Google for Cognito user pool OIDC identity provider. So the very first link points to the steps you need to follow. And if you go to step 1, and if you scroll down, here it talks about what redirect URL needs to be configured in the external identity provider for your user pool. So this is the one. Copy this and go to the Mozilla browser, paste this. Now you need to replace this domain with your user pool's domain, which is here. Copy this and replace this entire URL. So this is the redirect URL. This is the URL where the authorization code will be posted back to the other user pool. If you look at this diagram, step number 7, where when after a user successfully logs into the customer's user pool, an authorization code will get sent back to the first user pool, which is the your organization's user pool. So save the changes. And now we need to configure this user pool as an external identity provider in your organization's user pool. So if you go to this sign in experience tab and add an identity provider, here you have multiple options. In this case, we are going to use the openidconnect protocol to add the other user pool as an external identity provider. So name this as org a user pool, or let's name it as org a idp, and we need a client ID, client secret. So go back to this configuration and you have a client ID here. Copy this, come back to this screen, paste it, show secret, copy and paste it. Here we need OpenID profile email, and then we need to select post here, and then we need to retrieve all the URLs that are required for this federation using the issuer URL. So now let's go back to this screen. We need to get the issuer URL for this user pool. So how to get that? So again, go to Google, search for Cognito Federation endpoints. Actually, it's a bit slow here. Let me go back to Chrome. I will search Cognito Federation endpoints. So if I go to this first link, so here you can see a URL called well-known OpenID configuration. So copy this, open a new tab, paste it here, and here we need to replace the region and the user pool ID of your customer's user pool. So your customer's user pool ID is this one. Copy it and paste it here. And region is US-East-1 in my case. If you are creating a user pool in a different region, just make sure you enter that region here. If it is like US West 2 or if it is in Europe or any other location, just make sure you enter the correct region. That's when it will work fine. So here you can see all the values like authorization endpoint, the token endpoint, and then the issuer. So copy this issuer from here and paste it here. So it will automatically load all these URLs with by reading this well-known OpenID configuration. It will automatically load the authorization endpoint, token endpoint, all these things. So you just need to enter the issuer URL here. And now let's map the attributes. Let's at least map the basic attributes like email, name, family name, given name. So add identity provider. So we added an identity provider to your organization's user pool, and that is an external identity provider. Now go to your app integration tab, and before doing that, come here and let's create a test user for testing this end-to-end flow. So let's create a new user called org test org user 1, and you can set any password you like and then create user, and again select that user and edit, and let's add certain attributes for this user and test org user 1 at example.com. This is just a dummy email address. Let's add an attribute, a given name, test, family name, org user 1, and a full name, test org user 1, and save changes. So this is the username, which is test org user 1, and then you have all these attributes. Now again go back to the screen and select the app client which was created for your product. So this actually represents your product, and it has a callback URL of example.com. We need to update that as well. But before that, edit this, and here you select org IDP. So what this means is basically all the users from the organization A's, that is the customer's organization, can log into this application client, which is basically your product. So by selecting this, you are allowing all the users from the customer's organization to access your product, which represents this, which this app client represents. So save changes. Now it's the next step is to start the testing. In order to test this end-to-end flow, I am going to use an application called OIDC Playground. So it is available in the internet, and anyone can use this application to test the integration with any identity provider that supports openidconnect protocol. So what we need to do here is the first step we need to do is configure this redirect URI of this particular application in this app client, which represents your organization. If you remember, we added example.com. So now we are adding the callback. So the client app in this diagram actually represents this OIDC Playground app. And what we have done is actually added the redirect URL of this client application, which is the OIDC Playground app, in this client application configuration. The next step we need to do is configure all the redirect URLs here. So select custom option, and it will ask for the OpenID configuration URL. So go here, copy this, paste it here, and we need to replace the user pool ID and the region. So go to your user pool again, copy the user pool ID. So this is the first user pool in this diagram, which is your organization's user pool. So copy and replace this user pool ID and change the region to US East 1 and click use discovery endpoint. So it will automatically load all the endpoints, and you can even check all the endpoints here. So all these endpoints got loaded automatically when you click this button. Now we need to replace the client ID and secret. So again, go to that product A client configuration, copy the client ID and copy the client secret, and retain only these three scopes, OpenID, profile, email, and click save. So now we have done the end-to-end configuration, and now when I click start, it will actually redirect me to the second user pool, which is this one, which is your customer's user pool. Sorry, when I click start, it will redirect me to the first user pool, and when I click a button from this login page, it will redirect me to the second user pool. So we will see that flow here. So in order to see the network trace, I will open the developer tools and go to network tab. Now when I click start, it redirected me to the first user pool. Somehow it's not visible here. Okay, it's here. There is some issue with the alignment, so I'm not able to see it. Let me, yeah. So if you see here, it redirected to the first user pool's authorized endpoint. And now when I click this button, it will redirect me to the second user pool in this diagram, which is the customers user pool. And now we need to enter the user which we created here in the click sign in. So now what happened was in the backend, it actually did all these steps between steps 3 to 11 and then to step 13, that is to redirect back to the client application with an authorization code. So everything happened in the background. You can actually trace all those calls here. So if you look at these calls, so it redirected back to my first user pool with an authorization code, and then this first user pool got all the tokens in the backend, which you can see in the browser. And then this first user, my organization's user pool redirected back to the client tab using another code. And that is the code you see here in this browser. Now when I click exchange, it will get an ID token, access token, and refresh token, and click next and view the token in the browser. So here you can see that I was able to log in to my client application using my customer's user pool credentials, and you can see all the details here, the name of the user which matches with whatever we created here, the family name, the given name, the email address, all those things. Now if you go to that first user pool, you can even see a temporary user that got created for this user, and it will exactly match with whatever we created in that customer's user pool. So this is how you do the end-to-end configuration between two Cognito user pools using the OpenID Connect protocol. So if you have any questions or if you face any issues, please feel free to comment in the video and I will respond back to you. I hope you enjoyed this video, and again, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you.